Hello everyone, this is Kat. Welcome back to My Hero Academia Podfics. This will be the continuation of Hidden Messages. This will be Part 12, Chapter 12, entitled Intro to Work Studies. Monday evening proved that Izuku was right to include Aizawa in on the secret. In fact, it became obvious that he should have told him sooner. In just a couple of hours, not only was Izuku able to get a better handle on his quirk, he was also mostly uninjured because of Aizawa's intervention. Every time that Izuku's quirk proved to be more powerful than he could handle, Aizawa canceled it before he got hurt. The only injuries he ended up with were bruises from accidentally hitting walls. Aizawa also had a much better understanding of how quirks worked in comparison to All Might. Because his quirk takes away others, he had to look deeper into how quirks functioned than most people did, so his insight was invaluable. He managed to help Izuku get to a point where he was able to access Black Whip reliably and control it pretty well. At the end of their training session, they planned to meet again on Wednesday, and Izuku couldn't wait. Mostly because of how much his quirk was improving, but also partially because of how nice it was to be able to be entirely focused on his quirk, so focused that he was able to ignore the thoughts that had been plaguing him since he had walked back to the dorms with Shinso. After that conversation, and that night watching movies with Katsuki, Izuku started noticing that Katsuki was looking at him a lot, more than what could be considered normal. The more he realized it, the happier it made him. He wasn't sure exactly why Katsuki stared at him so much, but Izuku had been watching Katsuki their whole lives. It was nice knowing that the other boy was finally watching back. He hoped that Katsuki was looking at him for the same reason that Izuku looked at Katsuki, but he couldn't know for sure. For as long as he could remember, Izuku had been paying attention to Katsuki. At first, it was just admiration. Katsuki is so cool, and he is bound to be an incredible hero, and Izuku wanted to be there to witness every aspect of it, every step. But as they got older, it morphed into something else. For a long time, Izuku couldn't put a finger on what it was that was different about how he felt about Katsuki, but after seeing him almost die to the sludge villain, he had realized it. Katsuki was always, and has always been his best friend, but these new feelings were because he wanted to be more than just his friend. At the time, he thought that it was impossible for Katsuki to ever feel the same way. He was lucky that Katsuki even thought of him as a friend, so he pushed the feelings down. With this new development, though, he was getting hopeful. His feelings were bubbling up again, and he didn't know how to handle it. He was getting distracted all the time. The only time that he was focused on anything else was when he was focused on his quirk. This became a huge problem for him during his classes, especially heroics. Being distracted left him vulnerable often, which would lead to him being hurt. He almost always had bruises, and a few broken bones as well. And it didn't take long for Katsuki to talk to him about it. After a particularly rough training session, where Izuku had gotten a black eye from failing to block Katsuki's signature punch, Katsuki dragged him out on a walk around campus. As soon as they were alone, Katsuki started to question him. "What is going on with you?" "What are you talking about? I'm fine." "Deku, you've blocked that punch constantly since we were 7. You could dodge it in your sleep. Something's going on." Katsuki deadpanned. Izuku struggled with what to say. He couldn't exactly say that he was too distracted by a drop of sweat that was making its way down Katsuki's neck toward his collarbone to dodge. I've got a lot on my mind." "Like what? You know you can talk to me, right?" Katsuki nudged Izuku softly as they walked. "Yeah, I know. It's just, I don't really want to talk about it." Izuku fought to hide his reddening face from Katsuki, and he sped up a bit. "Okay, I'm not going to push. You can have fucking secrets or whatever, but please." Katsuki grabbed his arm, forcing Izuku to face him. "Stop getting yourself hurt." "Okay, yeah." Izuku turned back around to continue walking as soon as Katsuki let go of his arm. "I'll try." Izuku practically ran away from Katsuki to hide his blush. He didn't notice how upset Katsuki was by it. After that conversation, Izuku worked really hard to keep himself from being distracted. With a lot of work, daydreaming about Katsuki went from being something that took up all his time to part of his routine. It also helped that he caught Katsuki staring at him a bit less. Thoughts about Katsuki were always in the back of his mind, but slowly he was able to focus on other things, like mending his friendships with others in the class. By the time that Aizawa announced that they would be doing week-long work studies with heroes, Izuku had gotten his feelings more under control, and his friendships had been repaired. Or at least, he figured out how to make it seem like his feelings were in control, and he was no longer avoiding anyone. He thought about talking to Katsuki about it a few times, but ultimately decided against it. He still wasn't completely sure that Katsuki thought of him as more than a friend, and he didn't want to ruin what they had now. No matter what, he was sure that they would remain friends, but if his feelings were unrequited, Katsuki would definitely push him away a bit, and they would never be this close again. No, it was better that he didn't say anything. In that time, he figured out his quirk a lot better as well. Aizawa had worked with him a lot, to the point that he upped his limit to 25%, and he had pretty great control of Black Whip. He also had gained another quirk, Float, but he couldn't help but blush every time he thought about how that had happened. Katsuki and him had been wandering around campus celebrating, Katsuki getting his provisional license, when they started their usual game of shoving each other. At some point, they'd both fallen into the grass, something that had been made a habit of. As Izuku laughed on the grass, he made eye contact with Katsuki. Suddenly he felt weightless. He thought it was just a side effect of being happy, but once he had to turn his head to make eye contact, he realized that he was floating above the ground. Luckily, Katsuki was able to grab hold of him, because he couldn't figure out how to land at first. In the week following that incident, he found himself floating away a lot. Usually when he was joking around with Katsuki, it got to the point that he had to wear a rope tied to him. It was like that until he learned how to control it. It was a common sight to see Katsuki dragging Izuku through the air like a balloon. At the time of Aizawa's announcement, Izuku had control over Float and he could fly, but not with much precision. Because of his lack of precision, he was surprised at Aizawa's offer during their next one-for-all meeting after the announcement. Izuku had just finished using Float, Black Whip, and one-for-all to run through an obstacle course when Aizawa pulled him aside. "Have you given any thought into who you're going to go with for your work study?" Aizawa looked at Izuku intently. "Not really. I mean, I can't exactly go back to Sir Nidai, and I don't really know many other heroes well enough to know they won't hate me. I know that isn't something that I can control in the future, but after the last work study, I really don't want to work with someone that is hoping I would fail. I was actually going to ask if you had any recommendations. I already ran through All Might's connections." Aizawa's eyes widened. "Sir Nidai was hoping that we would fail?" Izuku waved his hands in front of him frantically. No, he was hoping I would fail at being All Might's successor, and realized that I wasn't worthy. He wanted the raid to succeed." Aizawa looked at him concerned. "You willingly did a work study under a hero that didn't think that you were worthy of your quirk. Did you know that when you agreed to do the work study?" "Oh, yeah, that was one of the first things he told me." Izuku looked at Aizawa's concerned expression and continued. "I wanted to prove him wrong." Izuku shrugged. "And my quirk is a secret, but Sir was one of the few people that knew about it, so I figured that he might be able to help me get a handle." "Did he help you at all?" "Not really, but we rescued Ares, so I can't say I regret doing the work study with him." Aizawa ran a hand down his face and sighed. "Well, you do make one good point. There are very few people that can really help you with your quirk because it is such a secret. At this point, I think you could do well with most heroes, but I think that you will learn the most with someone that knows your quirk." Gran Torino already said no before, and Izuku started, but Aizawa raised his hand to stop him. "I'm already planning on taking Shinso for his work study due to the lack of underground heroes available, but I'm willing to take you as well. I think getting a taste of underground heroics would be good for you." "Really? You would take me?" Izuku was barely holding back from jumping with joy. "Think about it. If you decide you want to do your work study with me, bring in the paperwork before class tomorrow so we can get it all signed." Aizawa paused for a moment, thoughtfully. "Before you make your decision, you should know that you'll be expected to keep up with me without using one-for-all. Black Whip and Float are fine, but you're a bit too bright when using one-for-all, and we're going for stealth." "Yes, sir. Thank you." Izuku practically skipped away to run the course again. The rest of the training passed in a blur. Literally, Izuku was so excited he sped through the course, faster than he had ever gone, multiple times. Taking Aizawa's offer into account, he even ran the course a few times without using one-for-all, and he sped through that too. Even as they called the end of training, Izuku ran over rather than walking to the locker rooms. After peeling off his sweat-drenched shirt, he realized that he'd forgotten his water bottle in the gym. Knowing that the teachers locked the gym after their training, Izuku rushed out of the locker room, hoping to get there before they leave. However, as he opened the door, he found himself running right into something. It all happened so quickly that he didn't realize that he was falling until he was on the ground. The first thing he noticed was that the ground wasn't as solid as he expected it to be. It was actually kind of soft. He had closed his eyes without really noticing while falling, and when he opened them again, he found himself face to face with Katsuki. They made eye contact, and Izuku got lost. It was far from the first time that Izuku had stared at Katsuki's eyes, but this was the closest he'd ever been. From a distance, his eyes looked solid red, but up close there were specks of gold hidden in them as well. Izuku could probably spend hours staring into them, and he would have, if Katsuki hadn't gotten his attention by clearing his throat, repeatedly. "Deku, get the fuck off me!" Izuku felt his cheeks turn bright red. He was too flustered as he fumbled his way to standing to realize that Katsuki's cheeks were the same shade. Sorry, I forgot my water bottle." Izuku tried to push past Katsuki. Katsuki just stopped him. "Dumbass, I grabbed it for you." He held up the water bottle in question. "Oh, thanks," Izuku stuttered out. "Why the fuck are you in such a damn hurry anyways?" Katsuki questioned as they both made their way to the locker room. Izuku continued getting changed, and he answered, "I'm excited. Aizawa—" Izuku turned to look and was immediately distracted. Katsuki was digging through his locker for a new shirt after he had already taken off the one he'd been wearing. Izuku couldn't stop himself from staring. "Deku. Deku!" Izuku was abruptly drawn back to focus by Katsuki. "What?" Izuku asked, completely forgetting that he had even been saying anything. "Aizawa, what?" "Huh?" "You were just explaining why you were so excited. Damn, Deku, what's gotten into you today?" "Oh, right. Sorry. Aizawa offered me to do my work study with him. And Shinso." "Oh, that's great." Izuku could tell that Katsuki was trying to sound happy for him, but it fell flat. "What's wrong?" Izuku was concerned. "Nothing." Katsuki grunted and stalked out of the locker room, having finished changing. Izuku quickly finished changing as well. He had stopped short of putting on his shoes during the conversation. As soon as he could, he raced out the door to find him, but he was already gone. Izuku practically ran all the way back to the dorms, catching up to Katsuki right as the other boy opened the door. "Kachan!" Izuku trailed off as he found the class in front of them. "Where have you been? You weren't fighting again, were you? It's movie night." Uraraka pushed her way to the front. She grabbed Izuku and dragged him to the couches. As he was dragged away, he made eye contact with Shinso and then Katsuki, willing them to help him escape, but neither did anything except follow with the rest of the class to the couches, too. Before long, the whole class was sprawled across couches, and a movie was playing on the screen. Although Izuku was seated at one couch, surrounded by the friend group he had finally started spending time with again, Katsuki was on a different couch, surrounded by his friend group. Izuku was still determined to finish their conversation. He smiled when Katsuki responded to his click. "What was that about earlier?" "What are you talking about?" "Why weren't you happy that I was going to do a work study with Aizawa? He's helped me with my quirk more than any other hero, and unless... Are you worried that I'll surpass you or something? You have been improving just as much as I have been." "What the fuck? No, I know that you'll surpass me someday. I've got no fucking chance against all your damn quirks." Katsuki scowled. "I'm never going to stop trying to beat you, though, so don't get fucking cocky." "No." Katsuki sighed. I just actually have my provisional license for this round of work studies, so I was hoping we'd work together, but there's no way that Aizawa would ever want a work study from me, so my quirk isn't subtle at all." "Yeah, with your quirk you can do a lot, but underground heroism isn't one of those things." Izuku thought for a moment. "I am supposed to bring in my paperwork tomorrow for Aizawa to sign. I can still say no." "Don't you fucking dare." Katsuki suddenly spoke out loud, staring straight at Izuku. Every head in the room had turned to look between the two of them. Izuku debated on how he would answer for the moment. He thought about responding silently, like most of their conversation had been, but he was feeling a bit mischievous, and confusing his classmates seemed more fun. "Okay," Izuku chirped, and he turned back to the movie. Ignoring the stares and questioning looks, he knew that he was bound to get questions, but he also knew the best part of the movie was coming up, and that would distract his classmates for a while. Izuku perked up when he heard Katsuki click to get his attention. "We have the rest of our careers to work together. For now, though, focus on getting your damn quirks under control. It's a bit disappointing that we won't be working together now, but I'll get over it when I get a work study with a top 10 pro." Out of the corner of his eye, Izuku could see Katsuki grinning, and he couldn't help but to grin, too. Working together for the rest of their careers sounded like a dream come true. Just like he was expecting, Izuku and Katsuki were questioned about their strange interaction during the movie, but they just brushed it off. Majority of the class believed them when they said it was an inside joke from their childhood. However, Shinso and Kirishima both seemed unconvinced. Luckily, neither of them said anything. Instead, they just shared knowing smiles before everyone headed to bed. The next morning, Izuku practically skipped all the way to class. The work-study papers securely tucked into his backpack, he made sure to get there early, leaving plenty of time to get the papers all signed before the majority of the classmates arrived. Just like he expected, Ida was the only student in the room when he walked in, and Aizawa was asleep in a sleeping bag in the front of the room. Izuku pulled out his papers and walked to the front, unsure about what to do. Aizawa was notorious for being angry with anyone that dared to wake him, but he also had instructed Izuku to come and get the paper signed. Determined, Izuku only hesitated for a moment. He cleared his throat in an attempt to get Aizawa's attention. When that wasn't successful, he spoke. "Mr. Aizawa, I have that paperwork to get signed." Aizawa slowly stood. "You thought waking me up would be a good way to get this done?" He glared. Izuku stood his ground and made eye contact with him. "I'm sorry for waking you, but you told me to get here before class to get my paperwork signed. I figured you'd rather it be done sooner than later." Aizawa stared Izuku down, still glaring, after what felt like forever but was probably just a few minutes, with neither of them backing down. Aizawa grinned. "Good. Hand them over." Izuku passed all the paperwork over. Within a minute, it was all signed. Izuku's officially Eraserhead's work study student. He couldn't wait. All right, everyone. This concludes Chapter 12 of Hidden Messages. Chapter 13 will be next. We're over halfway through this one. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far, and as always, thank you so much for listening.